We are very happy to meet you here and continue the excellent forum that we had just before. And now we will have a forum, plenary forum, namely economic and social issues after the pandemic. Let me introduce participants of this plenary. First of all, Heinz Bierbaum, Zofia Malisz. Heinz Bierbaum, of course, everybody knows he is a president of the Party of the European Left. I am sorry, yes. Zofia Malisz, Party National Councilwoman of Razem, Poland. Martin Schirdewan, co-chair of the left in the European Parliament. Manon Aubry, she will participate online very soon. Koljonen, General Secretary of the Nordic Transport Workers Federation, Sweden. Julie Steendam, I'm sorry, No Profit on Pandemic Campaign, Belgium. And Fabien Roussel, he will participate online too. He is a president of Communist Party of France. Okay, Martin, she is a first moderator, and myself, we will moderate this forum today evening. So, thank you very much, and I ask Heinz to start this forum, please.
Thank you. We are all working under the conditions of pandemic, and therefore there are sometimes a problem with the mask. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. The title of our panel is Economic and Social Issues After the Pandemic. And I think the answer to this question depends a lot on how we respond to the pandemic we are facing now. It's a very difficult situation with tremendous consequences economically, socially, and the poor and those who working in precarious conditions are hardest hit by the pandemic. We, as European left, we reacted very early to the pandemic. We have elaborated a platform with the title, The Corona Crisis and the Consequences for European Politics, in which we requested activities in 5 areas. Protection of the people first, a new economic and social policy, the defense of democracy, peace and disarmament, and international solidarity. Those elements are all the general orientation for politics after the pandemic, and we outlined these elements also in our position paper regarding the conference on the future of Europe. The starting point, however, is not only the pandemic, but the economic, social and political upheavals caused in particular by the ecological challenges like the climate change, which are aggravated by the pandemic. Simultaneously, the pandemic made evident that capitalism and the predominant neoliberal policy are not able to address the crisis in a proper way. We need a fundamental change in European politics and a new vision of a sustainable human development at European level. Our objective is the creation of a social, ecological, democratic, and peaceful Europe. First and foremost, we have to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the people. And in this context, we support the European Citizens' Initiative Right to Cure for free and universal access to vaccines. And I think it was a great success that the left in the European Parliament achieved the waiver of patents. I think that's really very important, and I hope this will also be implemented. The main consequence, also for the times after the pandemic, must be the expansion and the improvement of public services. We propose, as European left, the creation of a European Public Services Observatory to improve and expand public services. The causes of the climate catastrophe are linked to the profit-oriented capitalist system of production in general and to the neoliberal policy in particular. Our way to produce must be called into question. A drastic reduction of greenhouse gases is needed. It's now evident that a production based on fossil energies has no future anymore. But we need not only another energy policy, we have to rethink and to change our entire production system. A new economic and social policy is necessary, and it's obvious that neoliberal austerity policy must be abandoned. We need a social ecological transformation, or we could say also a left Green New Deal. This is a key component of the strategy, of the political strategy of the party of the European left. For the left, the combination of ecological and social needs is crucial. There is no doubt that a green industrial revolution, as the Labour Manifesto calls it, is necessary. And Jeremy Corbyn, when he was the leader of the Labour Party, they elaborated this very wonderful manifesto, and I think it's really very good that Jeremy today referred to the necessity of a green industrial revolution. But equally, workers affected by these changes must be protected. Just transition, of which Jeremy and also the other speakers in the opening session spoke, just transition, as promoted by the trade unions, is a concept that combines ecological transformation with social protection and aims to ensure that a green economy can provide decent work. Workers and citizens must not only see their rights strengthened in this transformation process, they must also be directly involved. Their direct involvement is indispensable for a left Green New Deal. From a leftist perspective, therefore, the connection of the Green New Deal with economic democracy is paramount. This also distinguishes our concept from other concepts. A left Green New Deal must go hand in hand with the expansion of workers' rights. This can be linked to the pillar of social rights. It has, however, to be transformed in binding rights in form of a social progressive protocol as a part of the treaties. We support the trade unions in their campaigns in this regard. We are facing increasing authoritarian tendencies, nationalism and racism. We are committed to fight against discrimination and racism, against the fascist tendencies. The defense of democracy and democratic rights is a core issue for us. The commitment for peace and disarmament is crucial for the European left. Military spending must be reduced considerably in favor of healthcare and meeting social needs. It's time for a new policy of détente. The economic, social and political upheavals we are facing present a lot of risks with authoritarian solutions and the rise of the far right. On the other hand, however, there are opportunities for an alternative policy and therefore for the left. In order to seize these opportunities, a stronger cooperation between the progressive forces is required. And I think the European Forum is a good occasion in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heinz. And now Manon Aubry, co-chair of the left in the European Parliament, online. She's waiting for us. And now please switch. Eve.
Hi everyone. I hope you hear me and you see me well. Maybe you can nod. Yes, thanks, Martin. That's how you measure a great team. I'll speak before Martin, but you have to understand that the two of us are a team, and we are grateful to invite you once again to the forum. And I'm very sorry not to be able to be there in person because I have other duties today in relation to the Conference for the Future of Europe, which is, by the way, one of the opportunities slash challenges for the coming months. I'll try to build on what, as Heinz said initially, because I think we're at a crossroads, especially if we look at the European Union at the moment. The European Union is definitely facing a huge crisis because it has hit a wall. In the midst of the crisis, we're not even able to produce, face masks or anything that were basically needed. And it showed how vulnerable we became also as a result of neoliberal policies. But at the same time, it's interesting to see that, some of the dogma on which the European Union has been built have been, in a way, destroyed or at least suspended for some time. And if you look at the list, well, the 3% deficit rule and the so-called Growth and Stability Pact that has imposed austerity over the last few years has been suspended until the end of 2023. A lot of the competition law that, for example, prohibits states to support companies directly, they also have been suspended. And then if you look also at the policies of the Central Bank, lastly, in a way, the European Central Bank with its last program, in a way, has been somehow directly supported states and going over some of its mandates. So one could question, how could we use this as opportunities? Because even the liberals, they have figured out that their policies actually are going into the wall. So I see this, if you flip this around, as an opportunity for us to actually go, to actually propose an alternative. And I think that's where we should be strong in connecting, especially what you've said, and the social and the climate challenges, because I do believe that they're the two sides of the same coin, and we actually have the solutions there. And that's why, our group in the European Parliament is campaigning and has been campaigning and will keep fighting on both the Growth and Stability Pact and getting over those stupid rules that have no economic meaning on one hand, and on the other hand, proposing an alternative climate package, because when you look especially at the European Union's one, it's not only not ambitious enough with an objective of 55% reduction by 2030 that we are not even in the past to respect, but on top of it, that will not be enough to meet the Paris Agreement. And we know, the climate crisis and the inequality crisis are intertwined, because the 10 richest percent of the population are responsible for 50% of the CO2 emissions. So that's why when we are talking that we are fighting against inequalities, we are actually fighting against climate change and vice versa. And I'll, put, and I'll stop there not to be too long, some key proposals first as well, to be vocal, to be prominent, and to be heard in the time, when the legislation is going on. I was talking about, moving away from austerity measures, meaning that we need an alternative and we need a new tax system in particular. That's why we've been calling upon a tax reform, especially to tax the companies that have made profits during the pandemic, during the crisis, and Actually, today with our group, we've been publishing a report that says that, with such tax, we would collect at least 25 billions at the EU level. So that's about the tax system. And then when it comes to the climate crisis, I think there as well, we need to think again about the role of the states to be able to organize, facilitate the climate transition, and in particular, talking, for example, about energy prices, which is an issue that everyone is seeing. And one way to deal with the energy crisis is for sure to be able for the states to control the price, and that's something we've been calling upon, but also for the states to be actually, to renovate houses so that we also consume less, initially need less electricity. So again, I believe our identity actually lies right there on these two sides of inequalities and climate change. And I think that's the way forward for us to actually answer to the daily life of people, and to provide some sort of hope that has been missing over the last few months. I don't know what you think, but yeah, I do. I will leave you with that note of hope that I think is very much needed, and we'll hand over to Martin.
Bueno, como ha dicho la compañera Manon,
as Manon said,
ahora es el turno también para Martin,
it is now Martin's role to speak. I don't dare pronounce your surname, Martin, out of respect to your language, but you know everybody who I'm talking about. He's co-chair of the left group in the European Parliament. Martin, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Manon and me, we usually work very complementary, so I will try not to repeat what she has already said today. First, let me start with thanking the organizers of this forum. I think this is a very important occasion for us to meet and to exchange, but it's also very good to see each other again after 1.5 years of the pandemic. Still, I know it's not quite as safe as we wish for, so please also respect the security measures that have been imposed on us by the competent authorities. I've listened with great interest to the contributions so far, and I would like to tackle the topic of today's panel from a slightly different perspective, bringing together three, at least from my perspective, interlinked aspects of the left debate, or of the further or broader left progressive debate. Firstly, on the pandemic. Unfortunately, the pandemic is back. You are all wearing your masks here. It is back in many countries stronger than before, stronger than ever, and the situation is spiraling out of control, unfortunately. And only today we have all learned about that new variant. I don't know exactly the name, B and then several numbers, but we don't know for how long this pandemic will drag on. But what we know is clearly that the debate about the pandemic and how to get out of it, how to overcome it, will also drag on for quite some while. The debate about public health, the health sector, the care sector, about the security measures, about the vaccination campaign, this will drag on for a while. And the left took a very clear stance from the very beginning in that debate. And I'm very happy that I can tell you that my parliamentary group, our parliamentary group, has been very vocal about this. And Julie, I think you can support me there, or will support me there later. We have always been demanding from the very beginning a TRIPS waiver. So we were actually at the forefront of those political groups fighting for a TRIPS waiver in the European Parliament, and we were successfully campaigning for it. There is a majority today in the European Parliament, but still, of course, the European Commission, some of the member states, also Germany, but also third countries, they are still blocking that TRIPS waiver in the respective WTO, meaning World Trade Organization's negotiations. So that was the first aspect I wanted to highlight. Secondly, the path to recovery, and we are discussing how to get out of the pandemic. The path to recovery is is uncertain because, first of all, the pandemic is still raging. And second of all, the recovery depends, of course, on the health situation. And there will be new lockdowns imposed in several member states. Supply and delivery chains will be interrupted. And poorer states, we have seen that through the different waves already, cannot afford to support their small and medium-sized enterprises. So economies and people will continue to struggle with the pandemic. And at the same time, the economic and social divide will only further increase, not only in the European Union, but also at the global level, and even more so the longer the pandemic rages. So then I'm thinking about how to get out of this. And I think this would afford actually a collective effort. This would afford a common European answer. But here, unfortunately, I think I have to disappoint you tonight. I hate to break it to you. This is simply not going to happen. The incoming German finance minister, the liberal Christian Lindner, he has already pledged his allegiance to the already mentioned Stability and Growth Pact as it is, more or less. So there won't be any substantial changes in the macroeconomic framework. Those would be desperately needed, and Manon already pointed that out and described it very well, so I'm not getting into the details here. But this would be needed, that reform, in order to not face a new post-pandemic decade of austerity in the European Union. And there's also the discussion about, and also Manon and Heinz, they touched upon it already briefly, the discussion about a new system of taxation. And also that has been already ruled out by the incoming German government. So there won't be that excess profit tax that Manon was talking about, and there won't be a proper financial transaction tax. That means, to sum it up, there won't be the new resources the society would need based on the redistribution of wealth. And class, this is the conclusion there, class still matters. And this is also something that we need to keep in mind when we are discussing our common political struggles. And with this background, I urge you to be also aware of the rhetoric of the extreme right. And it has been mentioned in the opening panel already. They are on the rise. They are quite skilled also in tactical politics, and they will exploit this crisis for their benefit. And they are trying to do so. And there's the discussion already ongoing in the European Parliament whether there will be or not a new but much stronger parliamentary group of the extreme right. And for now, it looks like as if there would be one. We don't know about all the details yet, but I'm sure you will be informed then, or you will take notice of it if this is going to happen. And thirdly, last aspect, and then I'm coming, then I will finish. Taking stock of the situation described by several speakers today, I think that the left and progressive forces need a comprehensive post-pandemic narrative, interlinking the debate about how to overcome the pandemic with, on the one hand, the recovery from it, and on the other hand, the challenges of our time. And Manon was focusing on the ecological question, but I also want to raise awareness for the digital transition in that context. We will overcome the pandemic, let's say, with a better equipped health and care sector, or in general, better equipped public sector or services. That will need investment. We don't have the means at hand yet, but we also need to take on big pharma. Clearly, no profit on pandemic. We will hear more about that. Lift the patents rights now. And the social and economic recovery will also depend on the ability of states to invest in infrastructure, in public services, but also in the digital transition and in climate protection. And therefore, I'm deeply convinced that we need to break with the regime of austerity, and Heinz was pointing that clearly, very clearly out already. We need to break with the toxic Stability and Growth Pact, and we need new tools for tax justice, a left perspective on economy and taxation, and we also need the clear message that we are capable of implementing that political program. And if we fail to combine these today's questions with tomorrow's challenges, if we do not succeed in creating a socially secure digital transition and a socially secure climate protection policy, people might turn towards the right. As I said, they are trying to benefit from crisis and also insecurity, but I'm confident that we will not let that happen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Martin. And now I ask Zofia Malisz.
Yes, my name is Zofia Malisz, and I am, sorry? No, it's all good. I'm trying to unlock here my speech. And I'm from the Polish party, Partia Razem, and it's my first time at European Forum, so I'm really glad for the invitation. Yes, and the topic of this discussion is economic and social issues in a post-pandemic society. And I was thinking about this, and I think, as we have been made aware today quite clearly, the main challenge to the global pandemic society is that there will be no post-pandemic society. So it seems like because we have invaded the habitats and destroyed our planet, and we are not somehow coming together enough and quickly to remedy this situation, we will most likely be caught in a cycle of pandemics in this century. So we will have to agree somehow or accept that this has become somehow our destiny. And as a result of this unprecedented man-made climate catastrophe that we are also going through at the moment, and our failure to kind of, have more solidarity species-wise, I think we are stuck in this, and we will have to really get busy and adapt with urgency to these dramatic circumstances. And Glasgow has been a big disappointment to me, at least, because they do not actually, the conclusions of that meeting have not shown this urgency, I think. So yesterday we saw reports on this new variant and the powerful mutations of COVID-19 emerging in South Africa and Botswana. No Profit on the Pandemic, a campaign that Partia Razem has supported all the time. So we need to make, this is very important, and this unfortunate news will give new energy to our efforts, to our campaign, even though it's dangerous, but this will, unfortunate as it is, give us another tragic argument to campaign for this. Because in order to remedy this situation, we need to make generic vaccines available fast to prevent the virus or any coming virus, any coming pandemic virus from developing further mutations within infected populations, kind of unhindered. So we need to deliver these vaccines free and absolutely accessible to everyone globally, and with urgency to the global south, because this is not only a danger to the global south, but to all of us. So we have, as the European left, an important mission. So we have to change the way of thinking that says, my health is my business. So that's prevalent in our affluent part of the world. Into our health is our business. And this is particularly hard in my region, in Central European, in Central and Eastern Europe. So this is a challenge that applies to how we build our health policies globally, campaigns such as No Profit on the Pandemic. So we have to try hard there. But this applies also to how we build these policies on the European Union level. And Poles are passionate Europeans, contrary to what you may hear sometimes from our government. Partia Razem is also very pro-European. We believe that the EU can be transformed and can be more, can show more solidarity, and we can change the structure to the benefit also of regions that are maybe not leveling up economically, such as our region. So Razem in our European program in 2019 has proposed a common European health standard to define fundamental healthcare services that should be available to all Europeans. And this standard would also establish investment goals for health services, for healthcare. And we also postulated to move European funds to support regions that might need help in kind of reaching this standard. And I think in the coming campaign for the next European elections, we are going to keep with this policy proposal. So this policy proposal had the explicit aim to make the health of all Europeans the EU's business, all Europeans, and to level up the healthcare inequalities that exist within the Union on the national and regional levels. So as I mentioned briefly, this is to think in terms of our health is our business is particularly difficult in my region because of the transformation to a capitalist system in the 90s. Which has kind of plowed through our society and left a hyper-individualistic mindset. So my health is my business. And the social service landscape that is closer to neoliberal Chile than to social democratic Sweden. So this is in its very basis where problems of trust in public health policy in Poland, for example, and slow vaccination rates originate from. So people in the region do not trust that this is the state's business to care for their health, and even if they do, because they want to believe that, they are disappointed by the quality of care. So Razem was formed in 2015 and as a party of the precariat, frustrated with the neoliberal regime. And since then, particularly since we received representation in the Polish parliament, we have worked hard to restore this trust. The broken trust in social ties and the role of the state as an instrument of care and social cohesion, and to remind Polish working people that we can be there for each other. So we are really on that basic level in our region, to convince people that we can be there for each other and shape our country and our state in ways that benefit our daily lives and our well-being, including our health. So, so we need to be there as a party, and we are. We have been invigorated lately by new kind of energy in the Polish trade union movement. So very many Poles, like the majority of Poles, are not unionized. So this is also a kind of an indicator of that basic lack of trust and organization and solidarity and the fragmentation of the society that we as a party are fundamentally trying to change. But there are signs, just like Manon has talked about, how there are also chinks in the armor of the neoliberal regime at the even on the part of the liberals a little bit. We also see some changes in Poland towards our way of thinking, that our work is our business, our health is our business, and we should influence that. So yeah, so this is our mission, and I don't know how much time do I have. Is it still in time? Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of our health policies. So we, in this struggle to support unionizing working people in Poland and building that trust and fighting for more for better public care and services, we listen to essential workers, particularly the medical personnel, public service employees, and young people in precarious jobs. So regarding health, apart from these absolute basic requirements, demands that we have to raise the funding for healthcare in Poland, which is one of the lowest in Europe, to 7% GDP at least, that would solve the problems of the lower level medical personnel right off the bat. We want to make the entry to medical professions easier and more attractive by facilitating international mutual accreditation of medical qualifications. introduce task shifting between medical professions, for example, transferring vaccinations to the pharmacies right now, taking medical bureaucracy off the physician's duty list and into a job description of a new profession, and involve digital solutions such as AI algorithms to organize medical paperwork. That's very ambitious, of course, but I am a big believer in the potential of AI. And I'm also grateful for the speech of the Minister of Labor of Spain an hour ago, and also for the report that the European Trade Union organization that we also heard from today made on the risks of AI. So we as a party, and there was also both of you from the left, European Parliament left, you mentioned the digital transformation. So we believe in, as a party that is kind of science-led, and looking into the future, we really believe in the potential of AI. So, for example, solutions for medicine in particular, diagnosis and devising new cures. But it is kind of my particular political interest to protect working people also from the risks of AI, such as those young people in precarious jobs and who work for global corporations and digital platforms. And this is my last point. So there is a huge potential that is happening right now. This is what Yolanda said. It is really happening right now, and we really need to put more attention on this aspect of the digital transformation, that there are already unregulated ways of exploiting workers that work for corporations and digital platforms via algorithmic management of work. And this is changing, not only the pandemic is changing the way we work. This disruption has already happened. It's over the kind of change into more working at home and so on. Now we are facing another thing where basically we are being exploited. The workers are being exploited by capitalists that introduce these artificial intelligence solutions that are almost completely unregulated, and the EU and the ETU have moved towards defining these dangers, but so far actual political action was undertaken in Spain, and we are also proposing some solutions. So these algorithms basically decide, they are kind of considered objective, and this is taken, this objectivity is seen as an excuse or used as an excuse to support decisions to hire, fire, and evaluate workers on some pretty arbitrary basis, or monitor them and so on. And yeah, it is our task and our partners in the trade unions and also European Union that has started identifying those AI risks, and we need to coordinate, and I hope to work with all of you present here at the European Forum and all friends on the European left to tackle this problem. Thank you.
Gracias, Zofia.
Thank you very much, Zofia. We will give the floor now to Anu, and I would like to remind you all panelists to try to stick to those 7-8 minutes so we can have some time for Q&A, both from people present here in the room and people in Zoom. So please do try to stick to the time slot and be a bit careful with the 7-8 minutes assigned. We're sorry to be so serious about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's also, for me, it's the first European panel. And I'm a Finn living in Finland, and I take like certain pride of usually sticking to the 7-8 minutes or the times that I'm given. So I'll try to be brief. My name is Anu Koljonen. I am the General Secretary of the Nordic Transport Workers Federation. We as a federation represent 41 transport workers unions in the 5 Nordic countries, and through our affiliates we represent around 340,000 transport workers in all 7 sectors. And I will concentrate today in talking about the transport workers. I could, of course, talk about workers in general, but since I have the 7 minutes, I will concentrate in the transport workers. And I would want to start by expressing and stressing the importance of the transport workers. I think the transport workers are the real heroes in this pandemic. We talk about the supply chains, for example, and you can see the problems in the supply chains where all of a sudden you don't have the products in the supermarkets. But what I think we don't mention that often, and I don't hear often enough, is that it's actually the transport workers also suffering in the supply chains, and they make the sacrifices. When the pandemic started, for example, the seafarers, they got stuck on board of the vessels. They could be stuck for months without knowing how and when they could come home. And when other people were working distant at home, it was the transport workers who kept the world going and the economies going. They brought us our food, our medicine, our safety equipment, safety critical people to the hospitals. And I think the transport workers should be rewarded and remembered, like respected as the fighters, the front line fighters for this pandemic. And unfortunately, the pandemic is not over, as we know. So we could keep on fighting. But unfortunately, I think they should be rewarded, but it's quite the opposite that we are seeing and witnessing now during the pandemic. And I will give you 2 short examples. It's only examples. I could use many, but I've chosen 2. The first one is aviation. My background is in aviation. I come from aviation. I used to work as cabin crew for Finnair, so I know aviation, and I have full respect that the pandemic is a horrible crisis. It's most probably the most difficult crisis in the history of aviation. But what I don't respect or can't accept is that quite many airlines use this pandemic as an excuse to push through changes in their labor conditions, and they use it in a manner that it's simply not acceptable. Jeremy Corbyn mentioned the hiring and firing and rehiring, and I would like to use a Scandinavian airline, SAS, as an example. And again, it is just an example. But what they did now during the pandemic is that they laid off all their pilots and cabin crew for obvious reasons. And in the collective agreements and in the labor laws, there are clauses that the crew would be allowed to have their jobs back when the situation is better. And the airline also got some subsidies in order to survive the crisis. And that's all fine. But what they did is that they actually restructured the company so that now that when they start flying, they have outsourced those routes to another company. It's not called SAS, it's called SAS Link or SAS Connect. And all of a sudden, the crew that is supposed to be getting their jobs back are advised to apply for their jobs in this new company with new lower collective agreements and lower salaries. And I think it is simply unacceptable. The other example I want to mention, it was already mentioned here, it's the platform workers. When quite many of us, we were working from home, the amount of deliveries just skyrocketed. Everything was home delivered to us working from home. And quite many of those deliveries are done by different apps and platforms where the workers are working through these applications and platforms. They need to log in, they need to accept the deliveries within some seconds. Every move they do is actually followed by the application. Of course, the application shows the way to where they are supposed to deliver, but it also tracks everything they do, the reactions and how quick they are and how quickly they are delivering. And they actually their performance is then valued based on these statistics. They get really, really short contracts, and then the new contracts are given to those who are the quickest and the most efficient. And with that, I think the labor market is taking a step back to the 1950s, where the dockers went to the harbors to get a job on a daily basis. But now this is done just in the name of an innovation and new technology. And the companies, they say that these workers working for them are actually not employees, they are self-employed partners or contractors who are flexible, and this is simply done to save costs. But there seems to be very much money involved in this business and high expectations, because a Finnish delivery company, Wolt, again as an example, they were just sold 2 weeks ago for 7 billion euros. 7 billion euros for a platform company that is delivering pizzas to your doors. I would really want to see some of that money coming to the workers doing actually the work, and not just for the few people like who are managing the platform. Thank you much. Thank you very much. That would be a good time to stop, but I will just say one more thing. I want to start with something positive. It's difficult, it's challenging, it's dark, but it's not impossible. There are some positive signs already there. There are the first collective agreements signed for platform workers. So it's difficult, but it can be done. The unions are ready to organize, the unions are ready to negotiate collective agreements, but we need some guidance also from the legislative side at the national level, and most probably from the European level as now. And if you remember something more from my speech, please remember that there are no free deliveries. It's always someone who is taking the bill. And at the moment in the current system, it's the environment and the poor workers in a precarious situation who are being taken advantage of. So we must be able to do better, and we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Julie Steendam from No Profit on Pandemic Campaign from Belgium.
Exactly. Good evening. All of you have been referring to our campaign, so I guess I'll have to make it through. So maybe first of all, question to the audience. It's a good way to start stretching. But who in this room already signed the No Profit on Pandemic European Citizens Initiative? Stretch your arms. One person in the panel to convince, and still a lot of people in the room to get some signatures from. That's amazing. So I'm Julie, and I'm very proud and thankful to be able to represent basically the people that I've signed, but also 380 trade unions, health organizations, NGOs, activist movements that have now supported our campaign, and 236,000 European citizens that have signed this petition. So big thanks for giving this opportunity. And I hope that you forgive me, but somehow I thought that it would be interesting to start with a quote by someone completely different. It goes like this. We need to develop a vaccine. We need to produce it and deploy it to every single corner of the world, and make it available at affordable prices. It should be a no-brainer that this future vaccine against COVID-19 should be our universal common good. And I hope you all get that on camera, because this will be the very last time that you will see me quote Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. Yeah. She made a statement in April 2020, the very beginning months of the pandemic. And lots of promises were in that statement, right? But actually only one of that was kept. The promise that we will make a vaccine. We is a very crucial word. Indeed, we as people, as taxpayers, contributed with public money to the research and development of the Pfizer vaccine, the BioNTech vaccine, Moderna, AstraZeneca, etc. This is true. But all the rest in that statement of 2020 was lost. So the organizers, very thanks for this, gave me 8 minutes to talk about this. So at the end of my speech, after 8 minutes, those same companies that I have mentioned will make $520,000 of pure profit, $500,000 of profit in just 8 minutes. It's profit. It's not a revenue. It's really cash being put in the pockets of lobby groups and CEOs and shareholders. Money that is lost and cannot be funded into our public health system. And this is a scandal. And after those same 8 minutes, The more tragical number is that 40 people will have died in the rest of the world because of the coronavirus. Still, after almost 2 years of this pandemic, every 12 seconds, one person dies of the virus. And of course, this is all being brought back to one other number that I would like to share with you. Only 5% of the people in low-income countries have been able to get vaccinated to be protected from infection of the COVID-19 virus. Only 5%. And at the same time, all of us and our governments are getting ready for another round of booster shots, a third doses that will probably cost us all a lot of money, as I have mentioned. So I'm quite happy that as activists, as militants, as leftist groups, that we weren't naive and that we prepared, that even though we had that nice promise of Mrs. von der Leyen back in April, that we got organized and decided to set up a campaign to ask the European Commission to make its promise true and make vaccines and treatments against COVID-19 public goods. So with that aim and that ambition, we set up the European Citizens Initiative, No Profit Pandemic, or also known as the Right to Cure Initiative. And this is a petition campaign, and we have the very high ambition of collecting 1 million signatures of European citizens to introduce a legislative proposal to the European Commission. And we're very happy that we already got this far and that we have the support of many groups that are sitting here, 380 groups in total to be precise. But I think as one of the last speakers in this panel, I think it's important to bring perspective, right? We need to talk about perspectives because we're at the eve of new lockdown measures. Only today in Belgium, new measures were announced, which is very pessimistic point of view for lots of people around us. We're also at the eve of a new, very dangerous variant that has now been discovered in Africa and is already on our territories as well. So we need to bring perspective for ourselves as activists to stay optimistic, to stay positive, but mainly for people outside that have been working, that have been affected, that have lost families, and that are now confronted with what seems to be a vicious circle of no ending and a pandemic forever. And the good thing is that there's actually still a lot of things that we haven't done as a society, as a government. We didn't manage to assure a global equal access to protection through vaccinations. We haven't succeeded in making those vaccines affordable. This is crucial because we're losing lots of public money in paying for those vaccines. And this means, for example, that a country like Indonesia, because of the high price settings that private companies can do now, they have to contribute the same budget as their total health budget just to buy those vaccines. So it's an impossible choice for a country like Indonesia to do so. We also need to have more public investments in our health system to make it solid, to be prepared for when there's a new wave. There's just something that we haven't done. I don't think any European country has had a serious increase in health budget. Why? Because we're losing the money to pay for the profits of private pharmaceutical companies. So as Ursula von der Leyen said, okay, that's the second time I'm quoting her, it will be the last time. It's a no-brainer that we should change it, right? And of course, the other debate that we need to put on the table is, like, if our political leaders would be seriously concerned about low vaccination rates, we need to tell them that they have to stop attacking people that refuse to get vaccinated, but instead should take responsibility and get seriously committed to assuring the right to get vaccinated for those people that want to, but that are being left behind by the pharmaceutical industry. So that's perspective. And I think that's an important thing that we can do with this campaign, the European Citizens Campaign. It has been able, or made us able, throughout the lockdown, throughout the pandemic, to mobilize, to bring people together, to bring this into the news, to bring our demands forwards. And as leftist groups, as left organizations, parties, we need to talk about ownership, about public control. We need to ask the question, like, who gets the benefits of all this science, these technologies, the knowledge that we have? Who is getting the benefit of it? Should it be private pharmaceutical companies, or should it be us, the people, who after all funded it and paid to have the solution ready? So it should be a no-brainer, third time, last time I promise, as left groups, and we cannot be hesitant about it, that we should say that we shouldn't allow to have private monopolies on life-saving technologies, and that we cannot allow there should be no profit on a pandemic. So I'm happy that I can share a very specific call to action with you. I think half of the room hasn't signed our initiative yet, so that's a first thing. But there's still a long way to go for the 1 million signatures. So we really need to have all your organizations and networks supporting us to have those signatures. Once we have 1 million, the Commission is legally obliged to respond to our comments, to our demands. So this is a very, very powerful tool that we have. So please help ourselves communicate it, talk about it, and mobilize your communication channels. And second, for those that will still be in Brussels next Tuesday, come to our protest. We will start a protest at 5 in the evening in front of the European Parliament, and we will march to one of the biggest lobby associations here in Brussels. And this is important because next Tuesday is the first day of the World Trade Organization Ministerial Council. And this is the highest decisive body of the trade organization. And many times we repeated it, this TRIPS waiver proposal, this widely supported proposal to lift patents and monopolies on COVID-19 technologies will be discussed there. So this is really a crucial timing to mobilize. So I hope to welcome all of you there, because we have to remind ourselves, and it has been said a lot, the way that we handle this pandemic and the way that we will get to a victory will determine how we will continue the rest of our generation that we live in, and if we can prevent future pandemics. So no pressure, but let's get to a victory for this. Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Julie, for your speech, and so passionate. Thank you. Now we will invite to our colleague from Transport, Roland Kulk. I think he's around here. Please come to the straight. Or maybe from the organization, I don't know. Oh, I see you now. Please come along. Thank you very much.
Good evening, friends, comrades. Thanks for me being allowed up here on the chair. I just asked for 2 minutes to share our thoughts as Transform Europe on this topic. How could an economic and social, real, better EU look like? And there's absolutely wonderful, precise analysis and solutions have been presented here. There's just one thing I would like as a footnote to what has already been said. If we will come out of this situation, what we need is public industrial policy. We have heard here now very precisely what we are actually doing right now. We are taking money from our pockets and give it to the industry. And what must be clear is the industry is planning. We are in a planned economy. We are not in a capitalist economy, what you learn in university and what I have learned. What we are is we are in a privately planned economy. What we need is a publicly planned economy. The crisis broke out. What happened? Some days later, the EU dismantled its own rules for make it possible for the states to react in a better way. So Stability and Growth Pact, kind of the golden rule, was dismantled. No state aid rules any longer, so that the states could actually do something. But then the big problem appeared. What happened? The rich were getting richer, the poor stayed back. At a certain time last year, it was my country, Germany, which was able to spend 53% of the whole state aid, which was pulled into the economy. More than half of the whole state aid was paid to only one national economy, the German economy. So, the EU is in a very paradoxical situation. It's very problematic. And Martin absolutely rightfully already mentioned the case that now the German new government, finance minister, already, as a hardcore guy, said no to a reform. This is not possible. So what we need is, we need publicly planned, based on the EU Parliament's decision, an industrial policy which supports all regions in Europe, and not only the rich ones. And we have the possibility. And this must be done by the single democratically elected European body, and this is the European Parliament. This just to add from our side. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And now Fabien Roussel from French Communist Party. He will be as a recorded video. We will see now a recorded video from him.
Chers amis, chers camarades.
Dear friends, dear comrades, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the participants of the European Forum of Progressive, Leftist and Green Forces. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you this weekend. I'm currently traveling on the other side of the Atlantic, where anger is also rising against the high cost of living. I want to stress the importance of the European Forum. 5 years after it was launched in Marseille, it has become a pluralist meeting place for debate between the political, trade union and associative forces in Europe. The European nations are all faced with a real challenge of civilization, faced with a capitalism that wants to crush more and more the world of work in order to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few millionaires, faced with the extreme right that promotes hatred of the other, of the foreigners accused of being the cause of all the ills of society, faced with the urgency of the climate crisis, which requires us to get out of the logic of profit at all costs. We cannot face such a challenge to civilization with half measures, with social or ecological measures to accompany an increasingly dominant and violent capitalism. It is therefore necessary today to attack the root of the problem, the omnipotence of the financial oligarchy which controls everything, the economy and politics. Europe must be freed from the dictatorship of finance and financial markets. The pandemic has revealed the havoc wreaked by liberalism on health and production systems. This has been shown very clearly by the pandemic. I will make 4 proposals here that I submit to our collective debate. First of all, everyone in the world must have the possibility of access to vaccination. To do this, we must lift the patents on vaccines. Today, the big pharmaceutical companies, which are making billions in profits with the complicity of the European Union, continue to block the lifting of patents on vaccines against COVID, even though public money has largely financed the research. When entire populations, hundreds of millions of people, the most fragile, are deprived of care and subjected by shareholders gorged on dividends to the law of the highest bidder, it is international law and the principles of the United Nations Charter that are being trampled on. Secondly, we must break with the neoliberal order resulting from the Maastricht Treaty and abolish forever the Stability Pact, in the name of which deep cuts in public budgets have been made. It is in the name of the European Semester and the Stability Pact that the European Commission has demanded that the EU member states cut their public spending on health 63 times over. The sovereignty of the democratic choices of peoples and nations must be respected. Thirdly, this pact must be replaced by a pact for social progress and ecological transition. The IPCC estimates that 6% of GDP is needed for social and ecological investment. 6% of European GDP is equivalent to 900 billion per year. This can be used to raise workers' incomes and social protection, to strengthen public services, to initiate ecological transition, to re-industrialize our country. These 6% of European GDP can be found by putting the ECB's financial effort not at the service of the financial markets, but at the service of the states, by allowing the states to borrow from the ECB at 0% or negative interest rates, and by really fighting against tax evasion and fraud in Europe. This implies putting on the list of tax havens the EU countries that practice it and taxing corporate profits at source. We propose to convene an international tax COP under the auspices of the UN. Fourthly, fight against relocation, which is having relocation in low-cost countries, which is having a devastating effect on employment. A moratorium on relocations must be enacted. Workers must be able to have a say in the direction of their companies companies' policies. Not a single penny of public aid should go to companies and their subsidiaries that relocate in low-cost countries. Dear comrades, I wish the European Forum will be able to continue working towards greater efficiency for the people of Europe. It is thanks to a public debate between all progressive forces that we can strengthen the whole of the left, move the lines within it, work on its transformation, its rallying around strong proposals in favor of the world of work and creation the creation of jobs and of youth. I wish you every success for this edition of the forum.
Thank you. It is the time now to have the question and answers. So I invite you to ask questions, make comments. In fact, it is very important that you participate. We have listened to very interesting contributions from the panelists. They have put forward many interesting ideas on the table, and now it is the time for you to ask your questions among the audience. So feel free.
Había alguna mano levantada.
I think I've seen a hand raised.
That's very disorienting. I have a general question for all of the panelists, I guess particularly with view to party politics, but also more generally, do you think there are common, can we diagnose a common malaise for the strategic impasse of the forces of the left in Europe? Or is the situation across the continent too diverse to identify common trends? Because I guess, I think the question that probably all of us have in the back of our heads, I certainly do, is why in the midst of a global health crisis in which the critiques that the left has been putting forward for decades seem to be borne out by reality every day, why are we not seeing that reflected? Obviously there are exceptions, but why in general have we not seen that reflected in any kinds of political advances for the socialist and left, social democratic left across the continent? Are there common problems we can identify, or is the situation too specific in every nation state?
Yes, thank you for that very interesting question. I'm trying to answer it for myself every day, I can assure you. I don't think that we can say that there is a general trend or a common trend. The situation is too diverse. We also see that some of the left parties or progressive parties actually managed to win elections. We had that recently in Copenhagen, where our sister party managed to come in first in Copenhagen, and the local elections in Denmark were very successful for a left party. We also see that there are certain parties rising in the polls, like in Ireland, Sinn Féin, for instance. I see one of our co-workers sitting there, and also the MEP should be here. Is Chris somewhere there? Yeah, hi Chris from Sinn Féin. So they are polling very, very good, like I think now 37%. So you cannot say that there is a general negative trend for the European left or for progressive forces. Then I would also factor in that they are always playing tactical motivations a major role when it comes to electoral decisions. We just had that problem also in Germany, where in the last few days of the electoral campaign, several hundred thousands of our voters of the left party, let's say, decided for tactical reasons to vote for the Social Democratic Party, because there was a neck-to-neck race between the Conservative candidate and the Social Democrat candidate who was going to become the next Chancellor of the Federal Republic. So that was something that also plays a role, but there is always a but, unfortunately. I think that the left, and maybe Jeremy already spoke about that, I don't know, but the left did not succeed to, and again I will stress the need for a comprehensive narrative, did not succeed to develop a common strategy, not only during the pandemic, but also beginning already during the financial crisis, did not succeed in put forward a common strategy and how to challenge, let's say, the politics of austerity imposed by the Commission. There was a split in the European left. We can clearly diagnose this nowadays, but there's also a reapproachment process now going on, and that actually makes me very optimistic for the time being. But I would not be that general, but I think we need to answer political questions. So where are we in the respective member states? We need to answer tactical questions. To whom could we reach out in order to organize a majority? And there are strategic questions, and this is also depending on the respective national context, but there are strategic questions that we also can already discuss or have to discuss at the European level, like the macroeconomic framework, how to overcome it, what is our objective there, how can we let's say, scrap the Stability and Growth Pact in order to enable a social development that will decrease the social divide in a society and enable member states to invest more in public infrastructure and public services, etc., things like that. So there are common struggles, and there are struggles at the national level, and I would not be that general, and I know I did not answer a question, but I'm really trying to answer it every day for myself. Thank you.
Yeah, I also have some reflections on that, particularly those differences, regional differences. But first of all, on the European level or a transnational level, of course, the pressure of social inequalities and injustices has at some point been noticed, and that's why von der Leyen is kind of using this in her rhetoric, and this is a phenomenon that I have observed on the European level, that there's a lot of talk about social inequalities or waiving the vaccines, but there's so they are trying to manage this in a way, pinkify the liberal establishment in the sense, introduced some progressive notions into their communications and rhetoric, but everything anyways is serving to kind of preserve the status quo in essence. And a very clear example of that also, and I was actually disappointed by the result of the negotiations of the new German coalition, but this is a very good case in point, where there is a great need in the country and also in Europe for progressive change and really like a transforming policy, and then in the end it's just becoming the result of that negotiation is just plugging holes, nothing really very revolutionary or even halfway radical, but it kind of, on the rhetoric point, maybe level, people are perceiving this as, okay, or even calling it a left turn or something like that in Europe and Germany. There is no left turn. There is no like a huge progressive revolution going on in the biggest and most powerful country in Europe, unfortunately. This stems also from the political system, I understand that, but I thought that the pressure of the inequalities, the pressure of the issues that we have, and the climate catastrophe, that this is going to somehow influence and make it a little bit stronger of a factor. As far as the regional differences are concerned, of course, I mentioned this briefly. In Poland, the left coalition that Razem is part of in the parliament is polling right now stably around 7–8%. Razem, which to me is the true left, we are in a coalition with kind of liberal left parties and post-communists. So the true left has a stable electorate of 3%, but this is a completely different landscape in Poland and different conditions, right? We are not even, I mentioned that Poland is maybe in some cases a little bit more like neoliberal Chile, but Chile has a movement and a kind of a basis to draw from of left forces and left organizations that are just massive and traditions, right? So there is a struggle between the left that has been going on for centuries. Here we kind of, there was a break in the 90s. Everything was discredited in terms of, the previous system basically was announced as discredited, and all sorts of attempts to at least propose left, come forward with left or social democratic even policies was denoted by the electorate as communist and so on. So this is a really hard environment. But as I said, I am hopeful. I think there is a confluence of factors globally that will support and give us a push as left forces everywhere. I do look at the developments in South America, particularly with admiration and hope, and I think at some point this will just also push over the left in Poland and in Eastern Europe towards some higher levels, or at least very stable electorate that we will be able to draw from. Yeah, so I think our chance is coming soon, probably.
Hello, hi. First of all, thank you. And as a German leftist, I just want to say that it's not a leftist turn in Germany. It's just kind of shows how regressive the last years have been in Germany, that the bare minimum is being celebrated, just to add that. But I wanted to say that I feel, and I wanted to hear some opinions on that, I feel that we know that the measures and the policies imposed because of the pandemic hit especially hard on the working class. But on the other hand, we have to support this in a way as the left. For example, a lockdown, we know, and in Germany you had a huge debate, and we know that it hits hard, especially for working class, for people with small houses and the system-relevant workers, or the relevant workers. So, and now we are debating a compulsory vaccine and so on. It's a really hard policies and measures, and I feel that as a left we have a problem here. So on the one hand, we support these hard measures, and they are important to sustain health and public health. But on the other hand, the working class is hit harder than the rest, and it is a tough state tough state policies when we talk about, for example, compulsory vaccine. I'm not against it. I just wanted to know your opinion on that, because I think that is one thing that the person talking before me, or the comrade before me, kind of touched upon, that we have at least in Germany, and I'm not sure if it's the same for all the left parties upon Europe, but there is I feel a problem on the one hand having to support those measurements and policies, and on the other hand knowing that people working 8 hours a day with a mask and being, I don't know, cab drivers and so on, they are hit most and hardest by the measurements. And I'm not sure how to get out of this as a left, to be honest. And I just wanted to know what, if so, you just look so concerned, I think. Okay, so yeah, that is my question, or I just wanted to know your opinion on that. For me, maybe just subjective problem.
The question is specifically on compulsory vaccination, or in general how? Yeah. Well, I think it's important to reframe the debate on the sacrifices being made. And all what you said is completely true. You mentioned all of them, and the most sacrifices, as with every crisis, are being made by working class people. And the issue is that, of course, it's very frustrating for lots of people. And I mean, last Sunday we had a big march in Brussels, not just people that don't want to get vaccinated, but for against new lockdown measures, because it's the cycles of sacrificing your wages, your living, your seeing your family, your social contacts, and there's no perspective of getting out of this. And this is also linked to, of course, how our governments handle the pharmaceutical industry. Like, where's the sacrifice that they had to make? They didn't have to make big investments in this vaccine. They are just getting all the benefits. So it would make absolutely sense, of course, to ask those same sacrifices from those multinationals, from the companies that are profiting from this pandemic. And I think this is what we need to reframe as leftist group or as broad social movements. Like, social justice means that the burden is being carried by those people that can, and that we protect the people that have less capacity to do so. So, of course, there's a whole medical science that we need to follow, and it's linked with the third dose debate. A few months ago, the World Health Organization Director General was very strongly opposed against the possibility of having a third dose in rich countries, of course, because it's absurd. Like, if we want to control the pandemic, we need to do it everywhere. We need to stop the variants, and every vaccine that we have should go to those people that haven't got the first shot yet. That makes sense. But it seems like we have evolved into a new situation that it's almost a medical necessity to have a third dose. So also we should avoid to being divided between should we refuse this third dose or not. It's mainly about, no, we just need more vaccines, we need more production, we need more public control of where they are going and how they function, because this is also a thing. Like, we don't have the best vaccine yet because of monopolies, scientists are not allowed to work together to share what works best, to take the best part of the Pfizer vaccine and combine it with what works best with the Moderna one. So this is a bit how to reframe everything. Like, what are the sacrifices and who are making them? And where can we actually find the capacity to get out of this?
Sí, bueno, a ver, opinión personal.
I have just a personal opinion. The economic crisis is an accumulation of the capital crisis. It's not so much about winning elections, but the fact that we are not able to establish a new framework that all the political spectrum can defend. My question is rather how we can go beyond that political framework that we have to manage. Sometimes we enter into contradictions. We have seen this in the past in Central Europe. And currently there is a certain weakness of the global liberalism caused by the pandemic. And how can we take advantage of this and go beyond the framework and manage better the resources? Because with capitalism, we only have leftovers and a lot of misery. We in the left have been forced to redouble our efforts. I remember the Greek case, and the people said, we want to leave the European Union, and the European Union says, no, you're not leaving the EU. So my question is, how can we go beyond these dynamics that sometimes we are trapped in?
Sí, vamos a hacer otras dos preguntas.
We have time for a couple of more questions, and then we can give the floor to the panelists. And finally, we can devote a couple of questions for the conclusions, because we are running a bit out of time. So 2 more questions, and then we give the floor back to the panelists.
Thank you. I'm from the Red Party of Norway. For the question, if the panel here are describing the situation in a general term, valid for all Europe, I think the description was very good. And also the proposals, how we on the left should counter this. But of course, as for Norway, Norway are mainly out of the European Union, but we are abiding the economic laws, more or less. And Norway is, you can say, stinking rich, the state of Norway, because of the petrol. So the state came out with compensation funds for COVID quite early. But we experienced that the compensations was mainly to the rich people, to the big billionaire, actually. So after also we can sum up that the rich people profited from the COVID, but the workers and the ordinary people had more and more trouble. Our party and also even the party in government now, the Labour Party, had to change their agitation and change some of the compensations packages given by the former rightist government. So our party and the other party to the left of the Social Democrat, we gained from this campaign, and we were stronger in the new parliament. So even if still we can say that it was a rich people, the billionaires in Norway, who profited. We managed to change something, and we see now also then we are opening that we have to struggle all the way. So it's a class struggle. We have to even if we manage to have some compensation, we will have to look very carefully who will have compensation. And even if in most European countries we are losing, we are not the biggest parties, but we can gain from this, and we are also serving the people if we take this as a serious class struggle issue. So in this respect, I think both the panelists gave a good description of the situation, as also the starting point here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Seema Saida. I'm from the UK Labour Party Momentum and the campaign group Another Europe is Possible. I want to talk today about racial capitalism. Across Europe and in the UK, we've seen a rise in racism and anti-migrant hatred. But across Europe and in the UK, it's migrants and people of colour who run the economy. In the UK, 50% of doctors in the NHS who have died on the front lines from COVID-19 are Muslim. And if you're from the Bangladeshi or Pakistani communities, you're 2 times as likely to die from COVID, mostly because people from these communities are working on the front line. They don't get a lockdown because they're running essential services. They're from the poorest communities, so they live in the worst housing, and they have poorer access to healthcare, and they're discriminated against. So my question is, as the left and the Labour movement, we can talk about solidarity with people of colour and migrants, but what are we doing to organise migrants and people of colour so that they're leaders in the Labour movement and they're leading the fight against the far right and against the neoliberal and capitalist economy that oppresses us all? In the UK, we have some base unions like IWGB and UVW that are organising migrants, and I'm interested to know what's going on in the rest of Europe and how we can build a movement of active solidarity, organising with people of colour and migrants to defeat capitalism. Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Workers' Front Croatia. Well, I have a comment to get back to what the comrade from Germany said. We have also an interesting situation in Croatia because half of the population has been vaccinated, but the other half is not, and the anti-vax movement is quite strong. And we can see that, and of course, the people who are the leaders of the anti-vax movement are mostly the extreme right and some clerical structures and so on. But a lot of some of the leftist-leaning people have also a tendency to to get involved with that, and also a big part of the classical working class. So we have a problem that, for instance, we are working on a new pro-worker labor law in our parliament, and for instance, when we write something about that in our social networks, all we get about platform workers, that the workers should work 7 hours a day and not 8 hours and stuff like that. All we get is like we get like tens and tens of people asking, but what about vaccination? Or for instance, we are trying to organize with some more militant unions a new union in one of the factories. And also we have a problem that most of the workers that even want to get unionized, they're also anti-vax. So we have a real problem with, well, basically with doing anything about workers' rights or unionizing and stuff like that, because a lot of the workers are anti-vax. And of course, our party is pro-vax, but we tend to try to somehow stay away from publicly commenting too much about it, because it's very problematic, because when we say something about it publicly that, oh, you should get the vaccine and so on, it's immediately we have like tens and tens of hundreds of workers just saying, no, you should be against corporations, against the system. Why are you supporting all these corporations and so on? So it's a big problem, and I was wondering that does anybody has some kind of solution for that? Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. I would like to ask the panelists now to make an effort trying to reply to this past round of questions, and in 2 minutes try to close this debate, each of you. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all for your questions and remarks, and I also want to thank the two comrades who facilitated that important panel discussion, Attila and Marta. Maybe I could start with reflecting a bit on the question that our comrade from Croatia and also my dear comrade from Germany just raised about mandatory vaccination and the public health and safety measures put in place or imposed on the European societies, because this is, let's say, the spectrum of measures that I somehow know about. I think that it is quite essential for a progressive left to make clear that there is no doubt about scientific, let's say, discourse, and also about the expertise of epidemiologists and those people working in hospitals, etc., working at the forefront of fighting the pandemic. We see a lot of disinformation flying around, especially in the social media networks, and this somehow contradicts what science always says, and also scientific results in the context of the pandemic. And that actually led to a situation, I try to understand that, and I think I do, on a rational level, but not emotionally, that leads to a situation where people are really, let's say, insecure about what is right or what is wrong during that pandemic. They had to stay at home for several months, most of them at least, but not those who were exposed to the virus, because they had to go to work every day. They did not understand why some that were less exposed to the virus could stay at home, work safely at home in home office. Others had to, let's say, keep the public transport running, work at the hospitals, etc., etc. So that's what we call nowadays, or those that we call nowadays, essential workers. And I think especially in this group, the skepticism about vaccination and the measures put in place is quite high. But it's not only in that group, it's actually, let's say, something that is to be found in the entire society, unfortunately, in the meantime. And if I look at the situation in Italy and in France, and if I compare it, for instance, to the situation here in Belgium or also in Germany nowadays, or in the Eastern European countries, Middle and Eastern European countries, then I think that the politicians there, or politics there, acted responsible already during the summertime. After breaking the third wave of the pandemic, they said that there has to be a mandatory vaccination program for at least those who happen to work in hospitals, in the health and care sector, those who are in touch with other persons at the daily basis. And the infection rate there now, the incidences are much lesser than here in Belgium or in Germany or in other countries. So obviously that politics worked. And I think this is something that, from a progressive left perspective, I would also say, if we go for a mandatory vaccination, then we should aim at those who are exposed to the virus at the daily basis, and we need to convince the rest of the society that vaccination protects everybody and that vaccination actually is an act of solidarity. To get vaccinated, you protect yourself, but you also protect those with whom you are dealing with, so to say. But I still understand that this movement obviously seems to get radicalized, that the extreme right, plays a role in radicalizing that movement. We saw riots in several countries, and I think that, again, when it comes to the influence of the extreme right, not only science, but also talking to people, taking time, understanding their needs, and convincing them to do the right thing is the only way in order to diminish the influence of the extreme right also in these movements. But this takes time, and still I'm hesitant when it comes to a mandatory vaccination program for all. But I think a mandatory vaccination program for essential workers that makes sense. We have seen that already in France and Italy to be a working program. So that would be something I would like to say to our Croatian friend and also to my German friend. Thank you.
So I would like to talk about migrants and this question that our comrade asked about organizing migrants. And of course, I cannot ignore the crisis that is happening on Poland's borders right now. So what is really tragic here is that the humanitarian aspect, for example, on the European level or European Union level is largely ignored. So a lot of politicians on that level are expressing their solidarity with the Polish government in their immense struggle of defending the European Union's borders and so on. So that's their first kind of argument, which kind of puts the humanitarian crisis on the border firmly in the background. Then there is the geopolitical situation where any sign of help from left organizations or migrant help organizations in Poland is seen as a kind of almost an act of treason, because then we are letting Lukashenko, this funny dictator, blackmail us with there is a threat that if we help the migrants, then more will be coming, in a sense. But the solution that Razem has always been has put forward, and we have been present on the border from the beginning of this crisis several weeks ago, and trying to raise awareness about what is coming and what is going on. We are there as activists, we are there as parliamentarians, and unfortunately, even that form of organizing migrants, because actually contact to politicians, contact to migrants, legal lawyers that help migrants and are specializing in migrant law has been now completely blocked, has been restricted by anyways from the beginning, but now it has been blocked. So activists, lawyers, politicians, the media cannot penetrate that emergency state strip that the government has introduced. I haven't heard really that much protest on the European level, or so this is where we as the left have to push back, right? We need to hear more about this humanitarian crisis, that the migrants cannot even organize themselves and ask for asylum. Their asylum demands, they were holding like pieces of paper saying, my name is Mohammed and I would like to apply for asylum in Poland. These things are not even denied formally. The people are even denied to make any contact with the authorities, or even a place where you can actually put your asylum application at, right? So it's a desperate situation. It's completely according to international law and human rights law, a travesty that is happening on our eastern border. And okay, I understand the geopolitical situation. I'm Polish. Geopolitics is very important. I understand, you know, that somehow there are some reasons to say, okay, we. You know, some political reasons on the European level, but the level of ignorance, the level of the humanitarian crisis, to me, needs to be. We need to put more pressure on the European level and on the bilateral level in Europe to raise awareness for this, and not praise, for example, that emergency state situation that the Polish government has called, because this is causing people to die. And the very small one example, there is a very small native, so to speak, Muslim community in Poland in the east, exactly there where those Middle Eastern migrants are trying to cross the border. And the thing that they are doing right now is basically organizing Muslim, you know, religious ceremonies to bury the people that have died on the border. This is their task, of these small communities of 100 Polish Muslim communities that they fulfill their religious duties right now. So yeah, you can help migrants. You can help organize migrants on the Polish-Belarus border. Just call for lifting that emergency state there. Thank you.
Yeah, now it's on. If I may continue about organizing the migrant workers from the trade union perspective. I participate in many international trade union meetings, and I think I have not participated one in the past few years where we haven't discussed that the trade unions should be more inclusive, and it's the women, the youth, and the migrant workers are always mentioned. But it is still the truth to be mentioned that the membership of the unions, in quite often, and especially the leadership of the unions, it doesn't quite reflect the situation at the workplace, and we could be more inclusive. So I would say the unions have acknowledged the problem, and some efforts have definitely been done, but to keep it short, I agree that more could and should be done for the unions to be more inclusive. Thank you.
I would like to get back to the question from our friend from Croatia about how to find allyship with people that are criticizing or are hesitant to get vaccinated. And I think it's important to note that our European Citizens Initiative is not just talking about ending those COVID-19 patents, but that we have a whole set list of demands that are very important to have this whole coherent demand for public control. And also important to mention that we already actually had a victory, because one crucial demand that we have is the demand for transparency. like have transparent contracts, know how much we are paying, how much we are investing, what is in those vaccines, how they are developed, etc. This is a crucial demand, and at the beginning, those contracts, negotiations with pharmaceutical companies were under complete secrecy. But thanks to public pressure with our campaign, but also thanks to other groups, now lots of those contracts have been published. So we can already say that we had one victory. But this transparency is very important for people because we kind of see through the pandemic that there's a lot of distrust in public authority or in public political leaders. And there's, of course, a link between what people believe or what they trust of what our political leaders are saying, if it is those same people that have been neglecting them and pushing them into a more social unequal hardship over the last decades. So of course there's a link between that and trusting those same people, asking you to stay at home, not to see your friends, get vaccinated, etc. if you don't trust the policies that have been putting forward before. So very direct, if you want to mobilize on the European Citizens Initiative, like guarantee, like we also want public control, we want more transparency in a very democratic way, not just by governments, but by us, by people, by medical associations, to have a transparent view on what's in those vaccines, how they work, how much we are paying, and under what conditions.
Well, we are getting to the end of this webinar, and before finishing, I would like to thank all the panelists from both, all the panelists here and the comments from the audience. And I think we have to go home with some homeworks from this webinar. First one will be to keep demanding free access to vaccines for everyone. Europe cannot accomplish just 2% of population in Africa has been vaccinated. And the second takeaway is that the way out of this pandemic is not on the workers' shoulder and not on the migrants' workers' shoulders. Thank you very much for your assistance. We will take a picture now, and if you want to participate in the photo, in the picture, you're more than welcome. And after a few minutes, we will have another activity, the book presentation. However, I have a sad new piece of news from the measures taken in Belgium today. The show tomorrow will be cancelled. Thank you.